Good morning, self-lovers. Welcome back. We're the Self-Love Show. I'm your co-host, Dawn Light, and my beautiful sister here, Trish Wright, is with us. We have an amazing show today. It's a very special one. I'm going to read Trish's intro bio, but Trish is doing the show today, which is super exciting. Oh, and by the way, in case for our new viewers, welcome. We're so grateful you're here tuning in. We do this Thursdays at 10 a.m. always, and we would love for you to know that we have a YouTube channel, tons of videos through the pandemic and on. And we're also on Apple, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. So for your listening ears, if you're driving or multitasking, all the shows are going to be there over time. We're still kind of reproducing the old ones, but we're so excited to expand in that way. Please tune in, like, share, subscribe. There's lots of value and lots of gold. So go mine for the gold of self-love in those platforms. We're so grateful for today, for this opportunity to serve you and give to you, because self-love is so important, right? And so there's a big wide umbrella of how to address self-love. It comes in all shapes and sizes, all kinds of opportunities. And so this is just such a joy and a service for both of us to do this. And we love you. We're here to support you. And please reach out if you have like a burning desire to have a topic met. We want to know this. So without further ado, I'm going to read about today's show. So insecurity can have debilitating effects on our lives, destroying relationships, hindering personal growth, and causing us to miss out on important opportunities. But where does this behavior stem from? Many times, insecurity and low self-esteem are the root causes of jealousy. Feeling unlovable and untrustworthy can lead us to become obsessed with what others have or do, fearing that they may steal something from us. However, by taking an introspective approach and examining why we feel this way, we can start to unravel our insecurities and cultivate healthier patterns of thinking. It's important to remember that nobody is perfect, and it's okay to not have everything figured out. Instead of constantly comparing ourselves to others, let's focus on our own individual journey and work towards building self-love and trust. Only then can we truly begin living a fulfilling life free from the chains of jealousy. In this show, we will discuss the beginning steps to living a more confident and reassured life. Trish Wright is a vibrant, heart-centered life lover with over 10 years of experience as a trauma-informed self-love, codependency, and certified sex coach. Her spiritual growth has taken her from a timid, innocent Montana girl through multiple challenging life experiences and relationships, through many personal incarnations, to an ambitious and empathetic love coach with Love Coach Academy and One Love Foundation educator. Hailing from the lineage of holotropic breathwork, embodied gestalt, nonviolent communication, and humanistic behaviorism, she believes that cultivating healthy connection with self and others will weave aliveness and sensuality in all areas of one's life, with the connection to the breath being most sensual, the most sacred. Through developing skills of radical acceptance, each one of us can promote resilience in spirit and learn to love our shadow and the shadows of others. Her current path is to empower people of all ages to take ownership of their perspective and live in their sovereignty while in deep connection with others. She teaches self-sourcing, forgiveness, relationship skills. By illuminating the inner core of each person's inherent strength, we honor the sacred in ourselves and each other on this one beautiful life path. I believe relationships are the greatest wealth we have. Compassionate presence and personal awareness can change the world, and we reach our highest potential one small, courageous step at a time. TrishWrightGlobal.com. So, oh my gosh, I'm so honored to introduce you and read your bio, Trish. I love you. Thank you for the work you do in the world, and we're really excited to dive into a juicy conversation today about insecurity.
Yeah. Well, so you and I have been talking and a lot of, so Dawn is one of my best friends, so we talk a lot. Well, as often as I talk to a lot of people. I'm actually an introvert, if you didn't know. And one of the things that's been coming up in multiple of my client sessions is jealousy. I work with polyamorous people. I work with single people. I work with women and men and trans. I work with all these people, and there's coming up with a lot of jealousy. And I've been thinking a lot about, what could, as a society, we'll call it, what is the foundational pieces of these insecurities, or what are the foundational pieces of the jealousy? And I mean, you've heard me talk a lot about, culture and how society impacts the individual and how the individual impacts society. We've talked a lot about that. And what I'm finding is that people are really seeking safety. I don't know about you, but the world's kind of crazy right now. Not that I'm sure it was always crazy. It just seems like a little up right now, And that we're seeking more safety. We're seeking more nervous system regulation. We're seeking more compassion and connection. And when we don't find that in the way that our brains have told us that that's what we want and how we want it, in this very specific container and way, then it kind of can create some shaky foundation, right? So I created this course, or this show, and a couple of free webinars coming up, and this course coming up too. I have a jealousy course coming up, surprise. That just like channeled through me because my clients were really struggling, and what is that? That so much is coming up in the day that we're really working on that trigger instead of actually building the foundational tools. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, maybe you know what I mean as a coach, but even in therapy, like if you're in therapy and you have these things like your childhood, or some abuse, or some things that your behaviors that you're doing that you need to stop, but there's so much in your everyday life that keeps coming up that you can't actually work on that. Like, this is the benefits of working in therapy when you don't have a bunch of stuff coming up for you. Like when things are smooth, like, and so what I'm finding is that because so much is coming up for them and they're constantly triggered, that they're not getting the foundational tools of working with jealousy and insecurity. Hence, the reason why I'm building this course is so that we're working on the tools while at the same time. Totally random. And just to kind of dive deeper into jealousy is, I mean, let me ask you, Dawn, and anybody who's watching and listening, have you felt jealousy before?
I felt more insecurity about other things, not necessarily jealousy. It's not really a piece that I've so struggled with so much. I've dealt with other people dealing with jealousy towards me. I've had that perspective. Um, I think that for me, places of insecurity were really about, feeling insecure about like my own expression, and feeling stifled and insecure about how I could express. I'm like referencing way, way, way younger me, like many, many years ago. But yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah.
And it sucks to have. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, it sucks to deal with somebody that has felt a lot of jealousy, and like, how do you work with that with them? It's really challenging.
I see that jealousy comes up in a couple different ways. I mean, I'm going to just name two for the sake of time and clarity. Is like there's the competitive way and there's the relational way. And so the competitive way is like, if you're an entrepreneur at all, or even into sports, is that you're taught that competition is necessary and that you have to be quote unquote the best. I personally don't believe in the best anymore, because I can see the sort of degradations and the dehumanizations and the way that the best or the top or the hierarchy of this is actually a system of oppression. So I don't participate in that anymore, but it's still ingrained in me, right? So there are places where I'll even see like, oh, it's more of a I want that and I don't know how to get there kind of jealousy. It's like I want that and I don't know how to get there and I want that. Like, and when I stop in those moments, when I notice the embodiment of this sort of like lean in and the desire of it, that I often look in, instead of projecting out that person, again, like remember that person is like that person's dressing so sexy, or that person's doing this thing and that's why they're, like, instead of doing that, which is a very easy, common thing to do, right? Like in jealousy, we often want to project instead of turning it back in on self and say, okay, what is it? What's really happening here? I want the idea that I have of that. I want the, the safety or the security of their finances, or I want the business like stability that they have, or something about it. And it's like, well, what is that? And that's one of the things that I wanted to bring in today is really slowing it down. Like when I have jealousy, here I'm gonna use a real life example of a relationship that I had many years ago. I was in a polyamorous relationship with my fiance, and he had found another partner who was very, very similar to me. Like looks like me, very similar, likes. I mean, down to she wore the same scent.
Perfume. Yeah.
Like I loved rose scent, and she had all of these different roses from around the world scents, and it just made me so insecure. We should change that languaging, but like it stimulated a foundational uniqueness in me, like this thing that like my ego, right? I was like, oh, I'm so unique. Like there's 7.8 billion people in the world. I'm sure that many of them love the scent of rose and wear it, but there was something in like so destabilizing within me around the relationship itself, around who I was. I was young then. I had created these ideas, like very idealistic things about relationship and polyamory and how, love should look and connection. And I didn't have the tools and the self sourcing to lean back into my own stability, right? It's being socialized as female, being, growing up in a really poor community, having some level of instability in my childhoods, and in my like early adulthood. Like I was not a stable person. I mean, not very many people are. And there was a lot of trauma that happened with multiple things that really caused those things. So I had jealousy towards her, right? And I'm telling you kind of like the back end of it so that you can see how it might look in your life. And so it's like I had all of these things that I wasn't even aware of. Remember, I had no idea in my early 20s. I was like, like I'm very idealistic as a young woman. I'm like, oh my God. So I had no idea that all of these things were running in the background, the programming. And here I am really jealous, projecting onto him, projecting onto her, believing something about her that was more, quote unquote, more special.
Better than.
Better than. And this idea, because I wasn't clear enough then that there were some things that I needed, not only to give me, but from my partner, or, to be able to communicate safety. And one of the things that I wanted to also bring in this show, again, I'm going to pin this here and we're going to come back to this. But one of the things I really wanted to bring in is, again, the self-awareness is like, if you're having the reaction around it, there's something under it for you.
Beautiful.
Yeah. There's a way that you say it, though.
How you relate to the issue is the issue. Yeah. And I can speak to the other side of the coin, right? Of experiencing someone be radically jealous of you. You know, like when my parents divorced, I instantly gained this whole other family pretty quickly. And it was my stepmother and her 4 children, and children from multiple men. So it was like all of a sudden my dad went from like horrible family life to now we have a new opportunity to be a family. And that was deeply hurtful to experience that. Like, wait a minute, you can't just F this one up and then start over all of a sudden instantly. Like, it doesn't work that way. So I had a lot of resistance to meeting them. And because I was almost like an only child, my brother and I were 10 years apart. So my parents didn't struggle to provide nicer clothes for me. Like, I was one child in a household. I was a girl. My brother was a boy. So there was never any, because of the age gap too, I had my own things, he had his own things, and there was never a conflict in that way. Well, when I stepped into that family dynamic, trying my best to accept them and be a part of the unit, even though I didn't want to, I was open and curious and doing my best, you know. But I experienced radical jealousy from all the girls and my stepmother, like crazy jealousy over just my father's love of me. Like, why would you be jealous over a father's love for a daughter? That doesn't make any sense. But she had such deep insecurity running in her that she was incredibly jealous of just the way he, you know, and he had a terrible way of expressing his love. He didn't really do a very good job at it, but she knew he really valued and loved me, even though he couldn't express it, and did it in a very sideways way. But it created so much conflict for us. There was just a crazy mix of the 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 women being jealous and the mother, and it was, I just felt so much pressure, and like I didn't know, I couldn't even feel like I could be authentically myself, because I knew the moment I wore anything that resembled something they didn't have, it would be like frowned upon and judged and all the things. So it created, and it was such a time in my life where I was, you know, 12 years old, 12 to like 16, 17, 18. I was in that, like, dealing with them. And it was like that pivotal time of coming of yourself and like the identity stepping forward into yourself. And it was all mixed in there. And it was such a struggle to deal with them and their projections and their jealousy. And I had such a hard time with it as a young one. And I know that our viewers can really relate with that. Who have you ever experienced someone being radically jealous of you, and you're just like living, being you, and you have no intention of trying to like cause a problem with someone, but it's their own deep, you know, wherever that is, they felt denied or rejected, or not, they couldn't have it, whatever it is inside, creating it.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's it's stemming from an underlying insecurity, a belief, or a really deep longing, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I'm playing with, and some people are going to argue with me. Whatever, I don't care. that insecurity and jealousy have similar ties, right? And what that looks like is that, again, we have the deeper desire under those girls' jealousy. Like, let's just like look at that. What did they really want? They wanted this perceived power that you had because you looked good, and they wanted, you know. And oh gosh, actually, what I really want to talk about is a really a poignant piece, is about the stepmother being jealous of you. And it was that she was, I assume, we're gonna use that word, that, because I don't know her, but I'm gonna theorize that I'm gonna guess that it's the connection and the bond that you and your dad had in those moments, that she was desiring, that she also hadn't got that perceived, real or perceived, right? It doesn't really matter because your brain doesn't differentiate between fantasy or reality. Just hold that somewhere. So she had a real or perceived desire, or this idea that you had something more than she wanted. And she wanted someone to choose her, to give all his love to her, to like bond her with her, and to do these things. She wanted that, and she might have never gotten that in her lifetime. I can see why she was like, this little brat, no, I could see that. And she's projecting it onto you, which is often very harmful for the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But it was her stuff, right?
Definitely.
So again, this is why jealousy is such an important topic. This is why
she went out of her way to make it really hard on me living there. Like ridiculously, like I'm still flabbergasted to this point. Some of the things she did to create struggle and strife for me, and to the point where I left home. I was like, I don't care if I have nothing. I'll leave and have nothing to not have to deal with the heartache and the stress. And I did. I left as soon as I could because I could not. It was so psychologically stressful and damaging to the point where I was like, I'll live in my car. I don't care. Like that, to push a child to make that choice, it has to be radically stressful.
Yes. Now, I've heard a lot of parents say to me that when their firstborn child or their first adopted child came in, that they either didn't bond, they didn't have the connection bond, and that one parent, like it connected or bonded with one or the other parent, which can be incredibly painful, especially when there's so much desire, again, attached to it, so much longing there. And I just want to say that this is a common experience. Like this is a normal, natural experience to have maybe some jealousy with your partner around the attachment with your child. It's okay to have that. It's about what you choose to do with those moments. I know you have something to say.
I also have a hit on, just to speak about what went on between my parents. I think that I have a deeper hit that my dad really still loved my mother and felt horrible about it. And I think that she just chose to hate me because I was symbolic of my mother, right? Like I represented my mother to her. And it was a place of like, I can never accept you because yeah, I think that my dad never stopped loving my mom. And I know that for a fact. I know that for a fact because my mom's even expressed it, that even in their divorce, he reached out years later and was like, I still love you. I'm so sorry. All the things. Right. And yeah. And so I think that I think my stepmother deep down felt that and couldn't accept me because of that.
Yeah. Again, super common, right? Super common that you are the embodiment of this other thing. And this is how triggers and traumas come up, right? Like you triggered her insecurities. Ding, ding, ding. Today's word is insecurity. So I know. I'm in a mood today, y'all. So there's a Dr. Lisa Firestone has a saying, and I wrote it down. So it's lurking behind the paranoia toward our partners or the criticisms towards a perceived third-party threat are often critical thoughts towards ourselves. Like, what does he see in her can quickly turn into she's so much prettier, thinner, more successful than me. And in this sense, this is where we get to really start taking radical responsibility. If you've ever coached with me, if you're my friend, you know how radical responsibility is one of the pieces of my life. Again, I am also human. There's projections. There's also the human stuff. And there's the place of where am I creating this? what is in me that is creating the thought process or creating the situation, right? And one of the things that I want to bring in today is really that is, let's start taking the jealousy or the insecurity, whatever you want to call it, whether it's competitiveness with a boss or a colleague or a friend, or even another person in your work field, or someone who's in your education curriculum, or whoever it may be, the person that you feel like competitive with. Let's talk about what it is that you feel like you're connected to them, right? There's something about you that feels in alignment with them. Is that not right? Right? So there's something about you that's, and then starting to look at what lives in you that it creates the unworthiness, the not enoughness, the self-esteem shift about their success. Success meaning whatever you're perceiving as success. Like success, we've redefined success in multiple shows. You can go back and listen to them on the podcast or the YouTube channel or whatever. But really, like, it's what your definition of success looks like. So let's start there.
I just want to say comparison is the thief of joy, and that's by Theodore Roosevelt. And I feel like what we're speaking about is the heart of insecurity. It's where we compare ourselves against the other.
Yes.
You know, and it's that narrative that goes on, like, oh, they're better, they have such and such, I don't, and it creates that disempowered viewpoint towards self. Wouldn't you say?
Yes. And I do want to just point to something that we haven't talked a lot about. And, because our brain remembers negativity 30 times greater than positive experiences. This is a mechanism that helps people, like our ancestors, to create safety, right? If this is, like a perceived threat, we're going to evolve to not be eaten or not be killed or not, so our brains are wired for negativity. That just is. And in that sense is like, you actually have to actively hack that. You actually have to look at it and have to work on like creating positive experiences, or we become depressed, or we become, deeply unsatisfied. Like there's patterns. Like your brain is kind of like, I always think about it like this. Your brain is kind of like a record. And throughout the years, especially in childhood, it gets like pressed, the song gets pressed into the record. Now, what trauma does is that it really deepens the grooves of the record as it goes down. And the daily, moment to moment, active choice to like melt that record down and repattern it is actually something that you have to commit to, right? So what I want to bring in is that there is traumas, right? These heightened states of awareness, of deep unsafety, of deep nervous system dysregulation, that's going to live in your body. So I know many of you have read The Body Keeps the Score. Well, this is true, right? So not only does your brain keep some of those things, either whether it's like perceived, like real and alive in your present moment, or if it's running in the background, and it'll also live in your body. So again, nervous system regulation and ways to process your trauma is also very helpful here. I specifically, go ahead.
So helpful is what I said.
Specifically, don't want to pass over that insecurities are often founded in traumas. So if you're food insecure, if you grew up really poor and you didn't have enough food, or your parents did this crazy thing where they had to lock the cabinet because you were a growing person and you wanted to eat, like there's people that have to do that. Like it's some crazy out there. Sometimes I'm just like, I just want to like feed everyone and take care of everyone. But if you have food insecurity in your early childhood, the likelihood that, I have a lot of friends who pack food everywhere. Like I have multiple men in my life who have packed food everywhere, like go with snacks, because they were food insecure when they were young. And I was like, really, interesting way that it like the symptom of something that happened. So I just want to name that even if you have deep insecurities based in traumas and in abuse, there are ways to move through it. It does take a lot of work, and it does take commitment, and it does take community to walk you through. And there's a way to really walk through these insecurities to more self-sourcing, more self-esteem, more self-confidence. And it is the commitment that you make to yourself. I'm not saying that it's going to go away. I'm going to say that it really does help to lean back. Like, you've known me, Dawn. There were moments, I was in a 3-year trigger around my sexual traumas, as well as a lot of early childhood, beliefs that I had created. Like, I was in a deep attachment wound in that relationship that I was telling you about. We're going back. That relationship that I was talking about, where I couldn't find center. And the thing that I'm most grateful about that particular relationship is that I was allowed, it allowed me to see how deep the desires that I had and the insecurities that I had around relationships, around connection, around my own understanding of how to show up. And so it taught me, through lots of therapy and different programs and with your help, Dawn, to really find center, to be like, oh, actually, security is something that I've got to create for myself.
Exactly.
I didn't know how to do that. And I wasn't raised in a way. I mean, and I'm not talking about my parents, but raised in a society in a way that was like, oh, be interdependent. It was either independent or dependent. And I was taught to be codependent, right? Just like many of us. This is kind of the common belief that, you sacrifice and you bend and you contort for love, which is actually a form of weird kind of self-abandonment and abuse.
And that was your spiritual curriculum. You were programmed that way through your childhood experiences to show up that way. And so you had to unlearn those behaviors.
Yes. And I want to make a distinction. Yes. And I'm want to making a distinction about I'm not blaming my parents. My parents were amazing. My mother was great. She was a single mom who fucking what time is it? 3:33. My mom was a single mom who worked so hard. She was doing her best. I don't know. I don't know how that amazing woman got us both to live and thrive and survive, but she's just amazing. And it's those places, it's my parents were fabulous. And it's also the social piece. It's also growing up in Montana. It's also the collective, who was I around? What kind of other mentors did I have? It's about the social things about, this is what being a woman looks like. This is what living in a body looks like. This is what you're supposed to do. This is how you fit in. And there's places where I couldn't fit in. I'm a weirdo. I hate to break it to you, but we're all kind of weirdos on the inside. There's some of us who conform better to these boxed in ideas of what we're supposed to do. And then there's some of us who are I just can't do that. I'm kind of an artistic weirdo. And again, that's also a place where insecurity was created. I kind of just am, I'm kind of a wild animal. A lot of my clients are wild animals on the inside, but they've created this box for themselves based on societal programming that they learned as a child, and it's generation to generation. My boomer clients are this is how I believe relationships should be, and this is how I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to get in the kitchen, and this is what love looks like. Love is cooking and cleaning and doing all these things and serving my man. And I'm is that serving you? I don't know. And then there's the millennials who are just kind of throwing a wrench in the I mean, do you see how it's layers and layers and layers deep here?
Mm-hmm.
This is, again, in that relationship was the first time I ever got to see that there was a place of radical self-responsibility that I could take for my own life.
Amazing.
And this is the kind of work that I do with my clients. Again, I also don't believe that you can just be radically self-sufficient and on your own and independent. I don't believe that. I don't believe that self-love is the only way. Self-love is one piece of this whole pie chart of you, right? It's really a foundational piece of learning how to love, accept, and respect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can be loved while you feel like an amoeba or melty and uncentered and not collected. You can be loved when you are self-sufficient. I'm just saying that there's ways to take radical responsibility for your life, which allows you to show up more present, more connected, and more available to the people around you.
Beautiful.
The pieces around looking at insecurity, one of the pieces around looking at your own jealousy, looking at what's under these foundational, like what's the belief and what's the desire down here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you have a little something that you want to lead us through today?
Yeah, I do. All right. So for everyone who's watching, listening, participating, I invite you to, if you can, close your eyes. If you're driving or listening in other ways, don't do that. But I invite you to close your eyes just for a moment and to really allow yourself to lean back to yourself. Notice whatever you're sitting on, whatever you're doing. Just even if you're driving, or if you don't feel safe to close your eyes, it's totally fine. Just notice the things around you. Sensations, sounds, any scents, any feelings on your skin. Just notice for a moment. Just even the breath going into your lungs. Now think of a moment where you have been triggered recently, whether it's insecurity or whether it's jealousy or whether it's frustration, and really look at what was happening. Be aware of what triggered you. And if you can, separate the judgment of the other person or of yourself. And if you can, just kind of peripherally separate yourself and look at what the negative inner critic voices are saying to you. Like, what's happening there? What is it saying to you? What your best friend would say to you? I doubt it. And think about those inner critic voices and kind of drop down under them if you can. And think about the deeper implications or even the origins of these beliefs or these thoughts. Did you feel a certain way or pressure to achieve something in your childhood maybe, or in parts of your life, maybe at work? Is there something that you think you're supposed to be? Or are you forcing yourself to conform to something or a value or a moral that you hold so tightly that other people aren't? How does this connect to your past? Okay, great. So just hold those pieces. If you are somewhere you can write them down, write some down right now or some notes. And we're going to go through it again in a slightly different way. So how to work with jealousy or insecurity is really like, consider what's being stimulated. Consider what's being stirred up, what's being, like worked up. Does the current trigger, is it something old? Is it a family dynamic? Is it a long-held belief? Is it some social belief that you think that you should hold? Is it like some hierarchical, if I do this, then I'm better than that? What's there? Right? And while you're doing this, pay attention to what Daniel Siegel says. He uses this thing called SIFT, which is how we can describe some, like what's happening. So sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Sift. Sensations, images, feelings or emotions, and thoughts. What's happening? What's sifting up? Just consider what's being stirred up now. Even in the midst of jealousy, I know that this might be really hard, but if you can take some space to calm down, because we often have reactions that can create even more harm, not only for us, but for other people as well. And so if you can calm down, if you can understand what's being sifted up, and find self compassion or self empathy. We've run this tool many, many times. If you don't have it, or if you need it, reach out to me or go back and listen. But run the self empathy tool here because something's being stimulated and it needs to be met. You get to meet this, your feelings, your sensations, your longings, your needs, your unmet desires. Something wants to be seen here, and you get to really validate your emotions with compassion. This is an incredibly important piece. And if you can, don't act out. This is where harm can be caused not only to yourself and to other people, but this is the destructive part of jealousy. Now, our inner voice or the stimulation of our nervous systems or our anger or frustration wants us to act out. Like those people did something to me and now I'm going to punish them. Or myself, right? I'm not good enough, so I'm going to work harder. I'm going to, if you can, just stay with the discomfort for a moment. We're often taught to chase good feelings, and it's actually a really destructive place to chase. It's all good, or we need to be good, or I need this feeling of, just be with the discomfort of life. This is part of you. This is a very sensitive part of you. Don't run away from it, and don't act out. If you can, it's okay if you do. We all have habits. So if you can just sit with your discomfort, bring in self-empathy and self-compassion, maybe even if you need to, write out the things that you'd act out on. You don't need to share it with anyone, maybe your therapist. Just get it out in some ways. Or if you need to go exercise it out, or if you need to dance it out, or if you need to really express it out in some ways in a container where you're not hurting or touching anybody else or yourself. And then from here, I teach a couple classes on on self-security or finding, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting this one tool that I use all the time. Silly. But this is like seeking out your own tools, your own strategies for self-sourcing. There it is. And this is going to help you lean back into you first, which is going to create a lot of confidence for you. This is going to create a lot of self-esteem for you. This is going to create a lot of self-trust, right? Is that when you learn to self-source your own needs, or at least most of them and some of them, or be able to communicate those things, that you can lean back into you, you can trust yourself that you're going to protect, and you know that you have balance and stability and clarity in this moment. Like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I'm going to. So there you go, right there. Seeking out our own self-sourcing, our own self-security. And then to stay active. Now, here's the piece around, I'm not going to say continuing to better ourselves, but there's an insecurity there. There's something that you desire. And it takes a little bit of work, right? I told you that commitment every day is really important here. Commitment to yourself. What is it that you want that you don't have? That's not like, oh, I'm bad and wrong, I need to completely change myself. there's the piece of accepting oneself for who and what it is. Like if you can't fit into the get up at 6 and go to bed at 8, 10 thing, and your body is naturally a different realm, like honor who you are and choose to work on the things that you can. Choose to work on your insecurities. Like, what is that about me? Oh, it's about this negative belief system that I have around my partnerships or my work or whatever. Choose to work with people who can hold you there, support you there, and really choose to commit to behaviors and thought processes that can help move you forward, that you can maintain and desire, you can maintain and act with integrity towards your goals. Now, integrity is where you are stable in your thoughts, mind, body, like all of your actions are in alignment. What I'm thinking and how I'm moving is in alignment. And then choose to talk about it from a place of where you are. This is what's happening and arising inside of me. This is who I am. I'm feeling insecure about these things. Talk about it without blame or shame. Talk about it first with your therapist. Talk about it first with your coach, your friends that you can trust to be biased or to be or unbiased. Sorry. Talk about it with your friends who can be unbiased and to actually actively give you constructive, loving criticism. Like, hey, have you thought about it this way? Now, from here, just talk about it from a place that's taking ownership of the feelings that are arising in you and where they're stemming from. Because this creates vulnerability, right? This is vulnerability. And this deepening creates connection. This creates connection. And that's what I wanted to bring in, is just a few steps. This is the beginning of moving from insecurity and jealousy into more stability. All right. Thank you. Oh.
Yay. That was lovely.
Aw.
Thank you so much.
Oh, so just to finish off, I just want to say that if you are jealous or insecure, this is also a very common experience. It's okay to be jealous and insecure. Don't punish yourself here. And if your partner or your friends are feeling jealous or insecure, meet them with compassion. Ask them what's under that. Be an advocate for their awakening. Be an advocate for their safety and security. We all, as a community, get to choose to actively heal each other, to transform each other.
And I encourage you just to like lean into a place of like, what is underneath this for me, and what's the inspiration here for me? Like that's what has really surfaced for me when jealousy arises. I tend to like question like, what is the inspiration here for me? That what, like, if it's an appearance, if someone has something I don't have, like they have a giant house and I don't, let's just use that as an example, right? I then look at it from an angle of, well, I want that. What's the inspiration here for me, so that I get motivated to move from that place and acknowledge my deeper want instead of pushing it down and feeling separate from that reality. That's what's served me in handling it when it surfaces inside of myself. Because then it's like accessing the deeper want.
Yeah. And how powerful is it to meet someone that you're feeling some sort of way about, or your partner, or even me, in the way of like, my deeper longing is this, and I'm feeling insecure about it. How much more connection have we had when that actually shows up? Like when I'm able to meet, to actually speak from the deeper want, to take the radical responsibility of what it is for me, and then to
Yeah, so important.
It's so important. And then it just creates so much deeper connection. It's intimacy that happens between us. And when I say intimacy, I just want to make it clear that I'm not talking about like romantic or sexual or any of these things. I'm literally thinking about the connection and the depth of our relationship, like intimacy on the level of soul to soul connection. It creates a level of trust that's unwavering.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
So
who doesn't want unwavering trust in every area of their life and all their relationships, right? That's the foundation of relationship is trust. Ding, ding, ding. It's trust in self, trust in God, trust in life, trust in others, that they can self-source, that they have all the answers inside, no matter what your curriculum that's surfacing, right? And like knowing this is so powerful. And even if it's not a confirmed feeling yet inside of you, like I coach all my sisters, friends, colleagues, clients to really remember that you have all the inner resources necessary to deal with your personal curriculum, whatever that is that's arising. And that's so important to be step back into a place of empowerment inside of yourself, regardless of how hard it is. Because yes, it's hard. It's for you. It's serving you. It's for your growth. Otherwise, it would feel easy, right? But it's okay that it's crunchy and hard. Give yourself permission to be in it and to be messy. Let it unravel, and know that you have all the inner resources and answers within. Like giving yourself that confirmation, even if it's messy and feels like unfigure outable, know that it is figure outable. Like God is working through you to figure it out. And yes, it might not be figured out right now, but give way for the possibility that you have the miracle answers within.
exactly. And that's the thing that you really brought up is the self-trust, right? I don't know about you, but I did not trust myself. I did not trust my opinion. I did not trust any of those things in me. And that's one of the pieces. When I started building it, I could trust other people more. It's this it's this weird thing that happens. The more that I can trust who I am, the more that I can lean into my own understanding of myself and where I'm going. Like, no, I got these boundaries. This is who I want to be. This is who I am. This is where I'm going. That I'm like, oh, I'm safe in my body. Honestly, I hadn't felt safe in my body in a long, 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 long time. I feel safe in my body. I felt safe in my body for the last few years because of these practices.
Yes.
And that's like, which allows me to feel safe in my partnerships, in my
exactly.
I'm not sitting here like, oh, Dawn has all these things that I want, like, family and a husband and, animals and a house. And I'm not being like, I'm like, wow, I can learn from her. I can lean in. And I can also know that I can trust my movements too. I don't need to be her. I can get her love and understanding. And I know where to lean in and where to lean back because I have boundaries for myself. So self-trust also expands trust for others. If you don't trust yourself, then you don't trust anybody else. I mean, this is just what I keep hearing.
The places we still distrust ourselves are going to keep being mirrored to us in our relationships. That's outer reflection is a reflection of inner world reality. And so if you're having an experience of someone and it's a conversation of distrust in your relationship, then that is a place to look at, like, where do I distrust myself still? Where do I not follow through with my word towards myself? Where do it's usually on a very, very, very much subtler level that you're doing something to yourself that's not in alignment or congruence with the highest and best way to treat yourself.
Yeah.
And so this is where we get a magnifying glass and really get to look at your patterning and how it's showing up. And that's the gift of coaches in your world, is because we have blind spots in this body vehicle that we're in. And sometimes we just need a person in our world to go, pause right there. What you just said is so important. Let's not gloss over it. Let's look at that and examine it deeper. And then you get to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I was subtly, like, for instance, I have a client right now that was really asking for transparency in her evolving relationship. And it's not even a relationship anymore, but like she's very triggered by that word, but it's a replace of relating with someone and like a deep request of transparency. But then over here with a friend wasn't willing to have transparency. And I had to really gently and lovingly say, here's where, let's look here. You're requesting transparency with this person, but unwilling to give it over here. What's that about?
Ding, ding, ding.
And then it was like a big light bulb and an aha, and was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was doing that. I was like,
where are we withholding?
Right.
Where are we withholding?
And so that's just one example of like the power of having a coach, because you don't know your blind spots. They're blind spots for a reason. There are conditioned imprints from childhood, all the different ages, the age stages we go through, the trauma, the imprints, the relationships. And sometimes they're so deeply ingrained, we're not aware. And it's beautiful to have support. You don't have to do this alone.
You don't have to.
And I highly recommend you, if you've been struggling with insecurity, this is your moment to reach out to this beautiful soul right here next to me, Miss Trish Wright, because she's amazing at her work and she helps take you to a deep, 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 deep level to where you get to go, oh my goddess, I had no idea about that part of myself.
Well, I'll tell you right now that I have a couple of webinars coming up. WTF is polyamory and why do I want it? And that's a free webinar just to start kind of looking at why we want what we want. And then the other ones that I'm looking at that I'm offering is also a free webinar, which is navigating jealousy and insecurity, like a 101 course. And then the 6-week course that I'm dropping in November is really looking at self-secure, a journey to loving our jealous and insecure parts. And I'm really, really grateful to offer that. So I know that you all are the first people to hear. Shh, don't tell anyone yet. It's going to be dropping next week. But I wanted to let you know. And me, you see it all over. Oh, you can look on my website at trishwrightglobal.com.
Should I type that in?
Yeah. Thank you so much, you all, for watching and listening. And thank you for choosing to go on this journey of self-love. I know that this is really, it can be really triggering. The shows that we've had can be really triggering for everyone. And it's been a powerful journey for both Dawn and I, and for a lot of the people that reach out to us constantly around like, oh my God, thank you for the show, or wow, that show was not cool, or, you know, whatever the feedback that we're getting is really fantastic, because I see you watching, I see you paying attention, and I see you wanting to do your work. And I just want to send you all out there some really big love. Thank you all for showing up. I would also like to say, Dawn, would you like to share anything?
If you are a beautiful woman experiencing, you know, that edge in your relationship where you're ready to grow, expand, really lean into like, what are the places where there's withholding or some trust issues, or if you've had a long-term relationship and you're like, you know, I'm repeating the same patterns. It feels uncomfortable. How do we get out of this paradigm and have more intimacy, more love, expand your loving on every level? And even if you've had, you're a long-term committed relationship goer and you've had multiple relationships, but you notice the same layer of patterning taking place, this is the type of relationship place for you. So it's a beautiful Facebook group that's free for women. It's called Reclaim Your Trust. And so we would love for you to join. Come on in. There's great resources there. We'd love for you to join and experience it, get support, show up, be authentic, and get that love and connection that you're needing, because it's, as women, we can reflect all the beauty and grace that's inside of each of us to help us expand and move back into that state of inner trust inside ourselves.
Type that in. Women Healing Trust Issues. That's the Facebook group. Reclaiming Your Trust. I want to say a special thank you to Sign Network, Love Coach Academy, Scott Katamas, Roy, and Russell, our amazing assistants. And I want to say a special thank you to you, Dawn.
Oh.
And KPFC for running us out on every Wednesday. And we will see you next week, you all. Bye.
Bye. Have a beautiful week. Thank you.